DoorDash getting into the virtual brand space, 7-Eleven competing with DoorDash, and what's going on with Wendy's and Reef. That's all ahead on this week's Monday Minute. Monday Minute works like this. We're going to ask each other about headlines that have caught our attention about something that's been going on in the world of restaurants, off-premise, and technology that in some way relate back to our book, Delivering the Digital Restaurant. Are you ready? Let's go. All right, Meredith. Well, let's get into this one straight away. DoorDash are getting into the virtual brand space. What's happening here?
Yeah, DoorDash quietly put up two posts on their blog in the month of July related to virtual brands. One about licensing your brand to become a virtual brand that they put then into host kitchens or other restaurants on their platform. And another one, a story about a restaurant who acted as a host kitchen and added a virtual brand to their lineup. And looks like DoorDash is at least testing, if not getting into becoming a virtual brand provider. So what's interesting about this here is, of course, Uber's been doing this for a long time. We talked about it in the book, Delivering the Digital Restaurant. When was that? 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago that we wrote that. So it's not new. And of course, Next Bite, Virtual Dining Concepts, and Franklin Junction have been doing this a while, but DoorDash has all of the assets in the world that you would need to make this happen. They've already got consumers, they've already got restaurants signed up, they have a whole bunch of data telling them what unmet search needs are and where things are likely to be successful. They know who's doing really well on the platform as a restaurant brand that maybe just needs to be in more places. They know which restaurants on the platform maybe have some capacity. So it makes sense that they would try to utilize all those assets in order to launch a new business and get even more out of them. However, as we know, virtual brands are harder than they look. You got to figure out how to get the host kitchen to execute well on whatever concept it is that you put out there. So we'll see how they go about doing that and whether or not this is something that they roll more broadly.
Be interesting to watch that one.
In the meantime, it seems like 7-Eleven is now competing with DoorDash. You're our convenience store guy. Tell us what this means.
Well, 7-Eleven, as we know, already have a partnership with DoorDash in the sense that when people are ordering their food, they're also able to add items from convenience stores. And 7-Eleven is probably one of the biggest players in this space. Of course, they're the largest C-store operator in the US as well. But there are reports this week that they have acquired a company called Skipcart. Now, Skipcart is a company that has 2.3 million drivers across the US and 98% coverage of the US. And they are offering on-demand deliveries. And it makes sense. 7-Eleven are treating delivery very, very seriously. And now with this added component of being able to have the logistics aspect of Skipcart, it makes a lot of sense. Now, I don't think this is going to stop the DoorDash partnership with 7-Eleven. I think that still makes sense for the DoorDash customer that wants some add-on item that perhaps a restaurant can't deliver. But of course, when you add on an item from a DoorDash restaurant order, you're adding some time into this. And so now, if I want to have my Gatorades given to me within 15, 20 minutes.
Which is when you need Gatorade. I mean,
when
you
you
either
need
need
that,
it right away or not at all.
I
right?
agree,
Yeah.
for sure. Or like emergency diapers and stuff like that. That's the kind of stuff where you really do need to be able to get something a little bit faster, and they'll be able to utilize their fleet in that regard. So I think what we're going to find, just more broadly, not just in the C-store space, is restaurants starting to explore logistics fleets options beyond just that which comes from the third-party marketplaces. And 7-Eleven are getting ahead of the game on this one. Okay, let's go a little bit macro for a moment. Grocery online sales were up 17% in July, which is a bit of brighter news, I suspect, for the online food delivery world that's had a little bit of a tough time of late. Tell us what's going on here.
Yeah. So you remember that online grocery sales were flat to declining at the beginning part of this year. And I think what was happening was a whole bunch of people used it during COVID. And as we got back to quote unquote normal, people stopped using it. And now this summer, as we've had a rise in COVID incidents again, people are being a bit more careful, maybe not going to the grocery store as often, using delivery. And I've said it before, I will say it again. The more this uncertainty and like strange pandemic world goes on, the more these behaviors become ingrained in us and we start to use them more consistently. I know I myself used more grocery delivery and restaurant delivery during the month of July when COVID got my family. And I think as these things happen, not only does it ingrain that behavior, sales go up in these different types of, whether it's grocery delivery or Amazon Fresh or restaurant delivery, whatever it might be. And as those networks get better utilized, the cost of delivery comes down. So all of this uncertainty is helping build this industry to become, number one, a sustainable consumer behavior, and then number two, a more affordable approach to doing things. While I don't love the COVID numbers going up, it is, I think, good for the consumer restaurant tech space to experience more growth and more usage.
Yes. And hopefully monkeypox doesn't do anything to our food numbers either,
Why
right?
would
So
you even bring that
I
up?
don't know. It's just
Thinking.
it's the latest one.
Not good. Okay, so the next one's for you, Carl. So you remember Wendy's and Reef had this giant co-announcement together of all these ghost kitchens they were going to roll out across the US. And it sounds like they're pulling back on that. So tell us a bit about that.
I'm a big fan of the Austin Powers movies. Do you remember the $1 million and all this? Well, I think when we reflect back on, when was it, August last year, Reef and Wendy's came out with this plan to say they were going to open up 700 Reef vessels with the Wendy's brand by the end of 2025. Well, now there's a change in that particular message. It was only actually in March where they were planning to open 150 to 200 units this year alone. And now they're saying it's going to be more likely to be about 100 to 150 by the end of 2025. So clearly something has happened here. There's a number of reasons I think behind it. You have to peel the onion a little bit here just to be able to understand perhaps what's going on. But Gunter Plosch, the CFO of Wendy's, has given a few indications as to why. He suggested that Reef's strategy change in having multiple brands operating out of their vessels is of course of concern to them. And I can understand that. We experienced a bit of that with Kitchen United as well. And look, the reality is any of these big established brands are going to be concerned about having their brand commingled with other brands. There's a whole range of operational complexities that come as a result of that. But ultimately, Reef, where they, of course, are taking the responsibility of producing the food as well, it adds even more complexity into the mix. So I can understand the position from Wendy's on that angle. The other side of this is that the performance of the US business hasn't been performing as well as what we've seen in the UK and in Canada, where they've been able to get AUVs of the range of $500,000 to $1 million, which is pretty good numbers, I'd say. And so maybe there's a factor of choosing the right locations. Was 700 the right number? Maybe they just need to focus in on more densely populated areas and really establish some great business model success through the US locations. And of course, we've got to bear in mind that Reef is going through a lot of changes as well, both in terms of the executives, but they're dealing with issues of being sued by vendors like JLL. They've got issues around the permitting of certain locations. So I think Reef is having a bit of a reset. They're trying to figure out, as many ghost kitchen models are, how to really optimize their presence. But I think given the fact that this is working in places like Canada and the UK, gives the Wendy's Reef partnership some hope of being able to figure it out in the US, but perhaps at a slightly slower pace.
Indeed.
Okay, last question this week, Meredith. MenuSifu, I think that's how you say it, has secured $20 million worth of funding. First of all, who are they and why is this relevant for everyone?
Yeah, congratulations to MenuSifu for closing your round in such a difficult environment. And the first thing that I think is great is companies are still getting funded. Great companies who know what they're doing still getting funded. So it's not all doom and gloom out there, you guys. You can make this happen. We believe in you. All these restaurant tech companies, you've got awesome traction and ways to go. And frankly, I'm going to get sidetracked here a minute, Carl. Like, you just joined a startup.
I did.
They're so lucky to have you at Juicer. And I think that tells us there's a lot more innovation to be had in this space. But MenuSifu, what do? They are a POS company that is rather niche. So they are focused on Asian concepts and in particular Chinese food concepts. And I think what that tells me is that there's an opportunity for tech companies to help restaurants better onboard and use the technology and get out of it all the amazing things that these technologies have been designed to do. So while we talk a lot about Toast and Square and even the old mainline POS companies that have a huge amount of market share, maybe they aren't the best tool for the job for a group of people who maybe speak a different language or who have a slightly different menu that needs to be organized differently. I was talking also last week to a company called Benchmark 60, who specializes in helping restaurants understand all the data that's being spit out of their labor scheduling tools. When you see something like that, again, I think it tells you there is a lot of innovation, a lot of amazing things happening in restaurant tech, but there's also a lot of opportunity to help teach restaurants how to use all this great stuff.
All right. Well, thanks everyone as always for listening. We'd always love to get your comments on what you love, what you don't like, and any questions that you might have for us here, and maybe any articles that you'd like us to feature on a future edition of the Monday Minute. But until next time, thanks for listening, and we'll speak to you again soon. The Monday Minute is available for you to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. Watch us on YouTube and follow us on all our social media Learn Delivery channels. Thanks for listening.